The invitation had been framed like a peace offering: 2 chairs, 1 microphone each, a quiet room, and a promise of a serious conversation. But the moment the cameras went live, it didn't feel like an interview. It felt like a courtroom. Only the judge wasn't wearing a robe, and the witness wasn't expecting to be cross-examined. The studio was almost aggressively calm: muted gray walls, soft, even lighting, no audience, no applause signs. Just the low hum of air conditioning and the faint, maddening tick of a clock somewhere behind the cameras. 2 olive-green chairs faced each other at a slight angle, close enough that neither man could hide behind distance. Jordan Peterson sat back with his legs crossed, a notebook resting on his knee. He held a pen like it had weight, like it could pin something down. Prince Harry sat forward in the opposite chair, navy suit, white shirt, no tie. His hands kept moving, open palms, little circles, the practiced language of, "I'm being sincere." His jaw was tight in the way it got when he tried to smile without meaning it. A producer's voice counted down off camera. 3, 2, 1. A red tally light blinked on. Peterson didn't rush. He didn't smile too broadly. He didn't soften himself for television. He simply looked at Harry with the kind of attention that made most people feel naked. "Prince Harry," he began, voice measured and careful, "thank you for coming." Harry nodded once, like he'd already decided he was doing Peterson a favor. "Yeah, of course." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was worse. It was intentional. Peterson glanced down at his notebook, not to read, but to set the pace. "I want to start somewhere simple. Everyone knows your story at the surface level. The headlines, the family conflict, the tabloid machinery. But underneath that," he looked up again. "What's the thing you're trying to protect?" Harry blinked, thrown off by the phrasing. He'd expected a question about the memoir, a question about the palace, a question about a scandal, something he could swat away with a clean, pre-built answer. Instead, this felt like someone reaching for the nerve. "I mean," Harry's voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. "My family, my wife, my kids, our peace. It's not complicated." Peterson nodded slowly, as if that was the expected answer, and also not the full answer. "Peace. That's interesting." Harry's eyes narrowed a fraction. "It's not interesting. It's just the truth." Peterson didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He let the words sit there like a coin on a table. "When people say they want peace," he said, "sometimes what they mean is they want control over the narrative. Not always, but sometimes." Harry's shoulders stiffened. "Are you saying I'm controlling a narrative?" "I'm saying it's worth examining," Peterson replied, still calm. "Because your life has been narrated by others for a long time." Harry gave a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm here, so you don't do that too." Peterson leaned back slightly, pen tapping once against the notebook. "Fair enough. Let's try this another way." He paused, just long enough to make Harry feel the pause. "Do you believe you've told the truth?" Harry's chin lifted, and now the familiar defensive confidence surfaced. "I've told my truth." Peterson's eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly. "Your truth." Harry's mouth tightened. "Don't do that. Don't—" He gestured vaguely, annoyed. "Don't twist it into some philosophical thing. People know what it means." Peterson's voice remained gentle but precise. "I know what you mean, but I'm asking if you know what you mean. Because my truth can mean my perspective, which is valuable, or it can mean my feelings, which are real but not identical to facts. Those are different claims." Harry stared at him as if Peterson had just tried to take something away. "It's not a courtroom," Harry said sharply. "I'm not on trial here." Peterson didn't smile. "No, but you are in conflict with the world, and conflict demands clarity." The air in the room changed. It was subtle, but you could feel it, the shift from conversation to pressure. Harry tried to soften it with sarcasm. "Right. So what? Now you're going to tell me to clean my room?" Peterson's eyes flicked once, acknowledging the jab, but he didn't bite. "If you had cleaned your room," he said evenly, "you might not have had to burn down the house to feel heard." The line landed with a quiet thud. Harry's expression froze. For half a second, he looked almost offended at the audacity of how cleanly it hit. Then he laughed again, louder this time, sharper. "That's ridiculous," he said. "You have no idea what it's like, growing up like that. Having cameras outside your home, being a child and realizing strangers owned your face." Peterson nodded, and for the first time his tone warmed. "That's real suffering." Harry seized on it immediately, like a lifeline. "Exactly." "And," Peterson continued, "suffering shapes you." Harry nodded again, faster. "Yes. But it doesn't absolve you of the consequences of your choices," Peterson finished. Harry's nod stopped mid-motion. The quiet returned, only now it felt hostile. Harry stared at Peterson, eyes hard. "So, you're blaming me?" Peterson's voice stayed calm. "No. I'm asking you if you've considered the possibility that your methods, however understandable, may be causing the very pain you claim you're trying to escape." Harry's hands clenched and unclenched near his knees. "I'm protecting my family." Peterson tilted his head. "By escalating publicly." Harry's eyes flashed. "By speaking the truth." "By speaking your truth," Peterson corrected softly. Harry leaned forward, suddenly angry. "You're doing it again, that smug thing, like you're the only one allowed to define reality." Peterson didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean forward. He didn't mirror the aggression. He just watched Harry the way a therapist watches a patient who's about to reveal something important by accident. "Let me ask you something," Peterson said. "When you imagine the end of this conflict, what does it look like?" Harry's lips parted. He seemed ready with an answer, then realized he didn't want to say it out loud because it would sound too much like revenge. "I want closure," he said finally. Peterson nodded. "Closure is a word people use when they want the past to stop bleeding into the present." Harry exhaled, tense. "Right." Peterson's eyes didn't leave him. "So, why keep reopening the wound?" The question wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was quiet enough that Harry couldn't pretend he hadn't heard it. He shifted in his chair, his jaw flexed. "Because nobody listened when I tried to do it quietly," he said, voice tightening. "Because I'm tired of being told to shut up and smile." Peterson's pen clicked once. "And the alternative is to speak until everyone is forced to agree?" Harry's face hardened. "No, the alternative is to speak until people stop lying." Peterson nodded, almost sadly. "That's a dangerous goal." Harry scoffed. "Truth is dangerous now?" Peterson's voice dropped a fraction, and the room seemed to lean in. "No, the belief that you alone can identify the lies, that's what becomes dangerous." Harry's eyes widened, and for the first time, the smugness slipped. Something raw flickered underneath. Panic, maybe. Or the fear of losing control. He sat back, inhales short. "You're not going to psychoanalyze me," he said. Peterson held his gaze. "I'm not analyzing you. I'm asking you to define yourself without your enemies." Harry's mouth opened, then shut. The silence stretched. Off camera, no one breathed. Harry's fingers tightened around his own palm, knuckles whitening. He looked away for a split second, then back at Peterson with a bitter half-smile. "That's funny," he said, voice cold. "Because you seem to be making yourself pretty comfortable as one of them." Peterson didn't react immediately. He looked down at his notebook, as if deciding whether to continue gently, or to stop being gentle at all. When he looked up again, his voice was still calm, but sharper, like a blade that had finally been unsheathed. "Then, let's be honest," he said. "If you see me as an enemy for asking questions, what does that say about what you're actually defending?" Harry's eyes locked on him, his face tightened, and the polite interview tone was gone. Completely. Harry didn't answer immediately. He stared at Peterson like the question had teeth, like it wasn't just an inquiry, but a trap built from calm words and bright studio lights. His lips pressed together, and for a moment he looked less like a prince and more like a man who'd walked into the wrong room and refused to admit it. "What am I defending?" Harry echoed, voice low. He let out a short laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "You make it sound like I'm guarding some secret vault." Peterson's posture didn't change, still composed, still angled back in the chair, notebook steady on his knee. "Sometimes the vault is identity," he said. "Sometimes it's pride, sometimes it's grief. Often it's all three." Harry's jaw twitched. "And you're qualified to diagnose that in, 15 minutes?" "I'm qualified to ask," Peterson replied. Harry leaned forward again, hands moving sharper now. All right, ask, but don't pretend you're neutral. This is the part I can't stand. People who act like they're above it when they're clearly enjoying it. Peterson's eyes narrowed slightly. Enjoying what? Watching, Harry snapped. Watching someone get dragged apart. A hush filled the studio. It wasn't produced silence. No dramatic music, no audience gasps. Just the stark quiet of a room where two people realized they were no longer playing the same game. Peterson lifted his pen. Do you feel dragged apart? Harry's nostrils flared. I've been dragged apart since I was a child. Peterson nodded once. By whom? Harry's answer came too fast. The press, the institution. People who wanted a story more than they wanted a human being. Peterson's pen made a small mark on the page. And now you tell your story publicly. Harry held his gaze. Because nobody else will tell it properly. Peterson's voice stayed even. That's the sentence I'm interested in. Harry scoffed. Of course you are. No, Peterson said more firmly. Because that sentence is the engine. Nobody else will tell it properly. That implies you're in a war for meaning. Harry's eyes sharpened. It's not a war. It's survival. Peterson's expression softened a fraction, briefly. Survival is serious, but survival mode is not the same as living. It narrows your world. It makes every question sound like an attack. Harry exhaled through his nose, annoyed. You keep doing that thing where you talk like you're reading a manual. Peterson didn't take the bait. Let's get concrete. You've accused your family, implicitly and explicitly, of betrayal. You've accused the media of cruelty. You've accused the public of complicity. Do you believe you've ever betrayed anyone? Harry's eyes widened, the question landing like a slap. Seriously? He said, incredulous. You want to talk about my betrayal? I want to talk about accountability, Peterson replied. Harry leaned back, shaking his head. This is exactly what I mean. People always want me to be accountable, but never them. Never the machine. Never the people who made money off my mother's death. Peterson's face tightened slightly at the mention of his mother. His tone stayed careful. I'm not defending the machine. I'm asking if you've considered the collateral damage created by your choices. Harry's voice rose. My choices? My mother died because of their choices. Peterson held up a hand, not to stop him, but to slow the rhythm. You're right about one thing. You were powerless then. Harry glared. And I'm not powerless now. Peterson nodded, and his eyes were sharp now. So you used your power. Harry's mouth tightened. I used my voice. Same thing in your case, Peterson said quietly. Your voice is power. Your name is power. Your platform is power. And power is never neutral. Harry's fingers curled against the armrest. You're acting like I'm some tyrant. No, Peterson said. I'm acting like you're a man with influence who is also wounded. That combination is volatile. Harry's laugh came again, harsher. So now I'm volatile. Peterson didn't blink. Right now? Yes. The word hung in the air like a bell after it's been struck. Harry's face flushed. He looked briefly off camera, as if he expected someone to cut, to intervene, to rescue the situation with a commercial break. But there were no breaks in this kind of room, just questions. He turned back to Peterson with a controlled fury. You don't get to call me volatile in front of millions of people. Peterson's voice dropped slightly. Then don't behave like it. Harry's eyes widened. For a second, he seemed almost shocked that Peterson had said it so plainly. Not cruelly, just plainly. No performance, no flourish. Just a boundary. Harry's voice went cold. This is why people don't trust you. You push, and then you pretend you're helping. Peterson's gaze didn't move. I'm not pretending, but I'm also not interested in comforting you if it keeps you stuck. Harry's lips pulled into a thin smile. You know what? Fine. Let's do it. Let's talk about stuck. He leaned forward again, posture aggressive now, and pointed lightly. Not a jab, but a statement. You make money telling young men they're victims, Harry said. You tell them the world is out to get them, and you sell them a ladder. Peterson's face remained composed, but something tightened behind the eyes. Harry continued, voice gaining momentum. And you know why they like you? Because you give them someone to blame. Feminists, the left, the woke. You give them a story where they're the hero and everyone else is the enemy. Peterson's pen stopped moving. That's not accurate? Harry shrugged. It's my truth. Peterson's jaw set. For the first time, there was a hint of irritation. That's clever, Peterson said, but it's also evasive. Harry smirked. Now you know how it feels. Peterson leaned forward slightly now, matching the energy, not with volume, but with presence. You've just accused me of exploiting grievance, Peterson said, but you built a public identity on grievance too. Harry's smile vanished. Peterson continued, voice calm but pointed. You've taken pain, real pain, and turned it into a public campaign. And when anyone questions your strategy, you accuse them of cruelty. That's a sophisticated defense. Harry's hands tightened. I'm not campaigning. I'm telling the truth. Peterson's eyes locked on him. Then answer plainly. What would it cost you to admit you've made mistakes? Harry froze. Not because he didn't have an answer. Because he did. And he didn't want to say it. His throat bobbed. His eyes flicked downward, then back up with that familiar defiant glare. Mistakes? He said, voice tight. Like what? Peterson's voice was gentle again, but not soft. Like assuming every criticism is an attack, like publishing details that harm people who can't defend themselves publicly. Like confusing confession with healing. Harry's face twisted. You're saying my family can't defend themselves? They have the entire palace behind them. Peterson shook his head. They have a different constraint than you do. You've left. You can speak freely. They cannot. That's asymmetry. Harry's breathing changed, shorter, faster. His hands started moving again, but now they looked less like confident gestures and more like agitation. So what? Harry snapped. I'm supposed to stay silent forever just because they chose a life of secrecy? Peterson's eyes narrowed. No, but if you're going to break the silence, you should be prepared to be questioned. Harry's voice rose. And you're the one to question me? Peterson's tone was steady. Yes, because you agreed to sit here. Harry stared at him, anger now fully visible. Then he leaned back, lips curling into a bitter smile. All right, he said. Then ask me this. Why does everyone always want me to be the bigger person? Why is it always my job to be polite, to be quiet, to be graceful, when they weren't? Peterson didn't hesitate. Because you claim moral authority. Harry blinked. What? Peterson's voice was calm, but the words hit hard. You claim to be the one who sees clearly. You claim to be the one telling the truth. You claim to be fighting for something higher. That's a moral claim. And moral claims come with higher standards. Harry's face reddened. He opened his mouth, but the response didn't come out clean. It came out fractured. You don't, he began, then stopped, then tried again. You don't get to set my standards. Peterson's eyes stayed on him. Then set them yourself. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't just tension. It was a cliff edge. Harry's jaw tightened until it looked painful. His gaze drifted just for a heartbeat to the door off camera, like a man who suddenly remembered he could leave. Then he looked back at Peterson, voice low and dangerous. You want honesty? Harry said. Fine, here's honesty. People like you don't actually want truth. You want submission. Peterson's expression didn't change, only his eyes sharpened. And people like you, Peterson replied evenly, want immunity. Harry's face hardened. The room felt smaller. The air in the room had changed. It wasn't louder. If anything, it was quieter. But it was the kind of quiet that presses against your chest, the kind that makes even the studio lights feel intrusive. Harry sat back in his chair, shoulders stiff, eyes fixed on Peterson with a glare that tried to pass as confidence and failed. You keep saying people like you, Harry said, voice tight. That's a convenient way to avoid admitting your own bias. Peterson folded his hands together, resting them on his knee. No, he replied calmly. It's a way to describe a pattern of behavior without making it personal. Harry scoffed. Everything you've said has been personal. Peterson nodded. Because you made it personal when you turned your life into a moral narrative. Harry leaned forward again, unable to stop himself now. I didn't turn anything into a narrative. I lived it. Trauma isn't a narrative. Loss isn't a strategy. I agree, Peterson said, but how you frame trauma determines whether it heals you or defines you. Harry's eyes flashed. Easy thing to say when it's not your family. Peterson didn't flinch. That's true. It's not my family. But it is my profession to study what happens when people bind their identity to suffering. Harry laughed sharply. So, now I'm a case study. Peterson's voice hardened slightly. You volunteered. That landed harder than anything before. Harry froze, then shook his head slowly. You know what's incredible? He said. You're sitting there pretending this is some balanced intellectual exercise, but you're enjoying this. You enjoy pushing people until they snap. Peterson's eyebrows rose. If you believe that, then you misunderstand me. Harry snapped back. Then explain it. Peterson leaned forward just enough to signal intent. I challenge people because clarity matters, and right now, you're not being clear. Harry's lips pressed together. Clear about what? About responsibility, Peterson said. You speak endlessly about what was done to you, but very little about what you've done since. Harry's breathing quickened. I've built charities. I've raised awareness. I've protected my wife. Peterson nodded. And you've burned bridges. You've escalated conflict. You've turned private grievances into public accusations. Harry's voice rose. Because they wouldn't listen privately, Peterson responded immediately. Then you walk away. You don't detonate the house and claim it was the only exit. Harry shot to his feet halfway before catching himself, hands gripping the armrests. His face was flushed now, anger fully visible. You have no idea what you're talking about, Harry said through clenched teeth. Peterson remained seated, calm, unmoved. That's possible, he said. But your reaction suggests I'm closer than you'd like. Harry stared at him, chest rising and falling. You sit there acting superior, like you figured out the world, while people like me actually live with consequences. Peterson's voice dropped. Everyone lives with consequences. The question is whether they own them. Harry laughed again, louder this time. Own them? You want me to own my pain so everyone else can feel better about what they did? No, Peterson replied. I want you to stop using pain as a shield against criticism. Harry pointed at him now, openly. You're doing exactly what the tabloids do. You dress it up in smarter words, but it's the same attack. Peterson shook his head slowly. The tabloids simplify. I'm complicating. Harry snapped. You're moralizing. Peterson met his gaze. So are you. The words hit like a locked door. Harry turned away for a moment, rubbing his face with one hand. When he looked back, his expression had shifted. Not calmer, but sharper, colder. You want honesty? Harry said. Here it is. People don't question me because they care about truth. They question me because they resent me for speaking at all. Peterson's eyes narrowed. That's a convenient explanation. Harry bristled. There it is again. You dismiss anything that doesn't fit your worldview. Peterson replied evenly. No, I dismiss explanations that absolve you of all agency. Harry stepped fully out of his chair now, pacing once, then turning back. Agency? I walked away from an institution that destroys people. That is agency. Peterson looked up at him. Leaving is agency. What you did afterward is strategy. Harry stopped pacing. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Peterson said, choosing his words carefully, that you didn't just leave. You attacked, repeatedly, publicly, and you framed it as moral necessity. Harry's voice shook, not with fear, but with restrained rage. Because silence was killing me. Peterson nodded slowly. Then I believe you, but survival tactics aren't automatically virtuous. Harry stared at him, incredulous. So now, I'm immoral for speaking? Peterson's answer was quiet. No, you're accountable for how you speak. Harry shook his head. This is pointless. Peterson raised an eyebrow. Because I won't validate you, Harry snapped. Because you keep positioning yourself as judge and jury. Peterson replied, calm as ever. And you keep positioning yourself as untouchable. The room felt like it might split in half. Harry looked around again, this time longer, toward the lights, toward the cameras, toward the door. You know, he said suddenly, voice bitter, this is exactly why people stop trusting intellectuals. You talk about responsibility while sitting comfortably above the damage. Peterson stood now, slowly, deliberately, not to confront, but to equalize. And this is why people stop trusting activists who refuse self-critique. Harry laughed harshly. I'm not an activist. Peterson didn't hesitate. You are, whether you like the label or not. Harry's jaw clenched. I didn't come here to be labeled. Peterson met his gaze. You came here to be affirmed. Harry's eyes burned. No, he said. I came here to be heard. Peterson's reply was immediate. You are being heard. You just don't like what's being said back. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Harry took a step toward the door, then stopped, turning back with one last glare. This conversation is over, he said. You crossed a line. Peterson didn't move. Then leave, he said calmly. But don't pretend you were silenced. Harry stood there for a long second, fists clenched, pride battling impulse. The exit was no longer theoretical. It was right there, and in the next moment, everyone in the room knew. Harry was deciding whether to walk away. Harry didn't say another word. For a moment, he simply stood there, hands clenched, jaw locked, eyes fixed somewhere just past Peterson's shoulder, as if the conversation had already ended in his mind. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and unmistakable. Then he nodded once, not in agreement, in dismissal. This isn't a conversation, Harry said flatly. It's a lecture. Peterson didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was calm, almost resigned. Then you were never here to listen. That was it. Harry turned, took 2 steps toward the door, then paused, just long enough for the cameras to catch the moment. He looked back, expression cold and controlled. For someone who talks so much about responsibility, he said, you carry very little empathy. Peterson met his gaze. And for someone who demands empathy, he replied, you reject accountability. Harry exhaled sharply through his nose, a humorless breath. Without another glance, he reached for the handle. The door opened and closed behind him. No dramatic slam, no final insult. Just absence. Peterson remained standing for a second longer, then slowly sat back down. He looked toward the empty chair Harry had left behind. Walking away, he said quietly, almost to himself, is still a choice. The camera lingered on the vacant seat. The conversation was over, but the tension stayed. If this confrontation surprised you, you're not alone. For more tense showdowns and stories that go where interviews usually don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.